Welcome to another episode of Tezos Explained, and today let's bring justice to the table. We have Arthur here, and let's start maybe with why? Why JavaScript?
Yeah, why JavaScript? JavaScript is just the most popular language out there. So there's this website that looks for GitHub at how many repos exist in every language, and JavaScript by far is the top. And then especially if you add TypeScript to it, which is a variant of JavaScript, I don't think it's good. I don't think its creator thinks it's particularly good, but it's a language that won because essentially it would let you deploy for the web. So if you wrote in JavaScript, you had access to every platform out there. At the time, whether it was Mac or PC, and then today, whether it's mobile, you have this distribution, and distribution is capital. There's a whole cottage industry that has sprung up to make JavaScript better. And so as a result, now it can be extremely fast with engines like V8, for example. It has lots and lots of libraries. And so all of these advantages, they more than make up for the shortcomings of the language itself. That's the main reason, popularity.
I remember when I started learning web development, I was looking at JavaScript like, now it's not going to last forever. And then when JavaScript kind of gained the popularity and how the ecosystem boomed, I was very much surprised, and I was like, I had a huge FOMO. And now when I transitioned to blockchain, I thought that bringing JavaScript to blockchain is a big challenge. Mm-hmm. And I think there were some other attempts as well to bringing JavaScript to blockchain. Yeah. And why our attempt will be way more successful.
I think the devil is in the details.
Yeah.
And so, we've had attempts to have something similar to JavaScript, right? Mm-hmm. So for example, Lego, which is a framework for languages on top of the Tezos L1, so that compiles down to Michelson, had different variants, including TS Lego, which was or is very close to TypeScript. So if you're used to TypeScript, you have very similar syntax, but it's not exactly the same thing. So the tools don't necessarily work out of the box. There were other attempts, I would say, in the blockchain ecosystem as a whole. Near, for example, has had some support for JavaScript, but it's never exactly full support. It's never exactly idiomatic, and it gets into the details. So Java on Jstz is not just JavaScript. It's also the node environment. It's also the ability to have all the libraries. It's also the ability to run quickly because you can actually run with just-in-time compilation. So there's a lot of these little details which are hard to get right, but which eventually makes a difference. You really want a seamless experience. It's also the fact that the contracts in Jstz talk to each other natively in HTTP. The idea is let's get as close as possible to traditional web development with Node, with NPM, and JavaScript. And that makes a big difference.
Yeah. So from my perspective, because I'm very obsessed about developer experience, I think it's about the journey from the idea to production. How do you feel around bridging, let's say, Web 2 and Web 3 with JavaScript? And do you think it's going to get to mainstream because of our rollup?
Well, one of the things that JavaScript did very well in terms of as an ecosystem is it was purely a front-end language, and it successfully became a back-end language. Mm-hmm. And I think the selling point was that you would write a single code base, essentially, and you had a flexible boundary where you could move some code on the front end and then, no, I'm going to move it back on the back end. And then you had some libraries take care of the synchronization between the two. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a strength that we can tap into as well for smart contracts, where you may have user-facing logic in JavaScript. You may have back-end logic also in JavaScript. You may have your smart contracts. You may also have an indexer that maintains a local state that represents the state of your contract. And all of this can have flexible boundaries. And so as a result, adding Web 2 functionality to an existing Web 2 application might be as easy as importing a package and putting it into your application.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. Let's think about the future. What sort of challenges do you think we still have once everything is delivered?
I think there's always a challenge for adoption and education. I think you have less education to do, specifically because you're meeting a lot of developers where they are and with the tools that they're used to using. But you still need, they still need to know that the tool is there and what it's for. Building up smart libraries as well. We can tap into a lot of existing JavaScript libraries, but there's a lot of smart contract primitives that people want. How do you write a token? How do you write a small DEX? How do you write, an NFT contract? So building up those libraries, I think, will be important. Best practices in running those contracts. There's also a component around code audit. So a lot of firms right now are used to doing audits in Solidity, for example. They might not be used to doing audits for contracts in JavaScript. So there's a bit of ecosystem building to do around it as well.
You need to fall in love with technology. And I need to admit, Jstz is my favorite one in Tezos ecosystem because I observe from very early stage to what we have already. And I think the future is bright, and I think we need to get more contributors. It's my role to get them. But for example, how would you encourage someone who's obsessed with JavaScript? This is the place that you should focus and contribute, because this is a next big thing.
I mean, if you're obsessed with JavaScript, that's going to be the best game in town. Right? We don't have to convince you. The questions are really around, I think security is a topic. So if you look at the history of Tezos, it goes from like a very different direction, right? Let's have this very custom language that's really specific for writing these applications, and you can even like write it by hand, and it will be optimized for formal verification, and it has all these guardrails. In Michelson, you have the difference between assigned integers and unassigned integers, but they're arbitrary precision, so that you never have bugs about running out of precision for integers. There's a lot of details which are really thought through to make it better for writing smart contract languages. None of that is true for JavaScript, right? In JavaScript, there's no distinction between floats and integers. There's no type safety. You have weird casting rules and so forth. Those are shortcomings for JavaScript. And for sure, they are big shortcomings when it comes to writing a smart contract. That being said, I think that what makes up for it is the size of the ecosystem and the fact that the tooling is rapidly improving. I started using Copilot in 2021, and I realized how good it was. But I also noticed very quickly that it was better for languages which had larger code bases. It's able to generalize, like it's able to learn from one language and then like take what it's learned from a language and use it in another. But code generation has improved considerably. It remains better in Python and JavaScript than it is in other languages, right? Noticeably. And so positioning yourself to that is quite important. I also think that we're going to see advances in formal verification, which is going to be more automated. And so it'll be possible to do it even for languages which are not necessarily like set up for that. So combining the fact that we're going to have models which are very, very good at generating JavaScript and tooling, which is very, very good at verifying JavaScript, it changes a little bit the trade-off and the balance. And so it makes sense to lean into it.
So looking at the Web 2 side of it, we have all NPM packages, libraries, everything out of the box. We can use them, we can use everything. So what about the Web 3 side of it?
On the Web 3 side, there's different pieces that need to come together. Sometimes they're, human institutions like having firms that can do audits of the code. You also have to have wallet integrations. You also have to have potentially explorers. Sometimes engineers kind of like greenfield projects, and you don't want to just like do it because it's fun. You want to do it because there's a clear need. I think it's very helpful for these projects to also basically be able to have what I would call views. So if you can have a view of a Jstz ledger as an EVM ledger, that makes your integration much easier. Like there's more going on, but you can replicate some APIs, and then it gives you a lot of facilities after that. In terms of block explorers, there's actually no block in Jstz. It's just transactions. You might want to be able to explore them. I think one key piece of infrastructure for dApps is indexers. Maintaining the state of your application, like understanding not just like what's in the storage of the smart contract, but what has everything happened. Because if I'm building a dApp, right, and I have a user connect to the dApp, maybe I want to display their last 5 transactions. Maybe I want to display a graph, if it's a DEX or like the past prices. So there's all these states that I need to maintain. What most people do today is they will go to a public indexer and they will query everything. But I don't think that's sustainable. And as the space evolves and as more people build, I think we'll see custom indexers. We have a great one in the Tezos ecosystem, which is Deep Loop, which works for both EVM and Tezos. And these approaches, I think, that marry very well with JavaScript.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, we can say that, yes, we do need contributions from outside. We need your input. We need Jstz League to be alive. And private description down below, you have like a little link to the survey that is out there. And if you're from outside any blockchain ecosystem, please do help us to build Jstz for developers, with you guys. So thank you so much, Alfred.
Yeah, I agree. I'll echo that because I think it's really critical. A big impetus for Jstz is developer experience. So we want to hear about your experience and what you want to see in a rollup like Jstz. Thank you.